Before we dive headfirst into this story, I've got to ask, where in the world are you tuning in from? Whether it's a quiet Arizona street, a noisy high-rise in NYC, or a peaceful lakeside retreat in Minnesota, it's always wild to see how far these Karen tales of revenge and justice travel. The sun hung low over the rolling hills, casting a warm, golden hue across the barnyard. Dust floated lazily in the air as Jake slid open the weather-worn barn door, the scent of hay and wool greeting him like an old friend. The place was quiet except for the soft rustling of sheep and the distant chirp of crickets warming up for their nightly chorus. He moved with practiced ease, checking each pen, noting the calm rhythm of life, until a sharp, desperate bleat pierced the air like a siren. Jake froze. Another bleat followed, shrill, panicked. He dropped the feed bucket and sprinted toward the sound, boots thudding against packed dirt. As he reached the edge of the barnyard, he caught a flash of something unnatural, polished chrome glinting in the light, the rear of a white SUV kicking up dust as it sped away down the gravel road. In the back seat, a baby lamb, his lamb. And in the driver's seat, unmistakably, Brenda and Nancy, the Karen sisters. Jake's stomach dropped. His fists clenched at his sides as he stood there, heart hammering in his chest, watching the trail of dust vanish down the road. It was so surreal, he almost questioned it, almost. But he knew what he'd seen. They took one of his lambs. He turned back to the barn, breath coming short and sharp. A quick head count confirmed the worst. Not one, but 2 baby lambs were gone. His youngest pair, barely 6 weeks old. Soft, skittish, and too trusting. Their tiny enclosure had been broken open, the latch twisted until the wood splintered. Jake stared at it, teeth grinding. This wasn't a random theft. This was personal. 2 months ago, Brenda and Nancy had moved into the old McConnell place just over the ridge. It was supposed to be a temporary rental, but they strutted around like they'd bought the whole county. Brenda, the louder of the two, introduced herself as a culinary curator of bespoke experiences. Nancy chimed in with lifestyle influencer. Together, they were the self-branded Karen sisters, and they let you know at the moment they opened their mouths. At first, Jake had tried to be neighborly. Rural courtesy, after all. He showed them around the barn when they asked, thinking they were just city women with a passing curiosity. But they kept coming back, at odd times, taking selfies with the animals, letting themselves through the gate without asking. Once he even caught Nancy trying to hand-feed a lamb a donut hole, giggling like she was doing a favor. He'd warned them then, firm but polite. "This isn't a petting zoo," he said. "These animals are on a schedule. They're livestock, not props." Brenda had laughed in his face. "Oh, relax, farm boy. They're adorable. You should be charging admission." Now he stood in the barn, surrounded by the echoing silence of stolen trust, his heart burning with a fury that had no outlet. Jake stormed into his house and yanked the drawer open, pulling out the memory card from his trail cam. He jammed it into his laptop and waited, pacing behind the screen as it loaded. There, 2:17 p.m., clear as daylight. Brenda, in oversized sunglasses and a pastel flannel shirt, standing awkwardly in the back pasture, glancing around. Nancy, waddling through the fence line in tight jeans, a clumsy crate clutched in her arms. They crouched low, called to the lambs like they were coaxing puppies. The lambs, too young to know better, trotted forward. A few awkward scoops later, and they were gone. He hit pause, fingers trembling, and then hit record on his phone, capturing the footage straight from his screen. He called the sheriff, explained everything, sent the footage. The answer was hesitant. "Well, Mr. Parker, it's not that we don't believe you, but property disputes get tricky. Do you have proof the lambs were yours? Branding? Chips?" Jake's voice was tight. "They were 6 weeks old. They're tagged in the farm log. They've been here since birth. We'll have someone look into it. Just don't escalate anything on your own, okay?" He hung up, jaw set. They'd look into it? By the time they did, Brenda and Nancy would have those lambs roasted over an open flame with rosemary and a TikTok filter. He stormed outside, needing to breathe, needing to think, and that's when he saw it, half crumpled, stuck in the mailbox like some smug announcement. A flyer. White background. Glitter font. Karen and Nancy's Epic Barnyard Barbecue, this Saturday. Featuring real farm-fresh lamb. Jake crumpled it in his hand. His fingers twitched to rip it apart, but he didn't. Not yet. He needed it. Later that night, he did what he always did when his thoughts were too loud to sleep. He walked the pasture, flashlight in hand, boots dragging through soft grass. The remaining sheep were restless, especially the mothers of the missing lambs. One bleated softly at his approach, nuzzling his hand as if asking where her baby had gone. He felt his throat tighten. "This is war," he whispered. The next morning, he drove by the Karen sisters' place. The gate was wide open. Cars lined the gravel driveway, music thumping through oversized Bluetooth speakers. The air reeked of smoke. He pulled over just beyond the tree line and crept up on foot, crouching beside a stretch of old fencing. And there they were, Brenda, now in denim overalls stretched tight across her midsection, cradling one of the baby lambs like it was a fashion accessory. Nancy snapped photos with a DSLR camera, angling her body just so for each frame. They laughed, twirled, posed. The lamb looked terrified. Jake's blood ran cold. They weren't hiding it. They didn't care. In their minds, they hadn't stolen anything. They'd rescued it, repurposed it for the sake of spectacle. The barnyard was just another backdrop for their curated lives. "Don't worry, lambikins," Brenda cooed in a high, mocking voice. "You're going to be the star of the grill." Jake stumbled back. If he stayed, he'd do something stupid. Back in his truck, he rested his head on the steering wheel and exhaled hard. This wasn't just about two lambs anymore. This was about the principle, about boundaries, about decency. And it was clear these women had none. He tried again to contact animal control. Left voicemails. Got nowhere. That night, he reviewed the footage again. Memorized every detail. He zoomed in on the broken latch, the time codes, the license plate of their SUV. His brain ticked like clockwork, every image feeding a rising plan he wasn't yet ready to name. Sleep never came. By morning, the town was buzzing. Jake overheard someone at the gas station talking about the Karen sisters' barbecue. "I hear they've got real lamb on the menu. Like, straight from the farm." He didn't correct them. Not yet. Instead, he drove straight to the fence line where their property bordered his. A narrow strip of scrubland separated their manicured backyard from his pasture. Jake checked the gate again, still busted. Left hanging open. No effort made to repair it. They didn't even bother hiding how they got in. As he turned to leave, a voice rang out behind him. "Well, if it isn't Farmer Boy." Jake turned slowly. Brenda stood on the other side of the fence, holding a mason jar full of something pink and fizzy. Her flannel shirt was unbuttoned over a floral blouse, and her expression was smug. "You here to cry about your little fur balls again?" she said, sipping loudly. News flash. They wandered in. "We saved them." Nancy appeared beside her, eyes hidden behind massive sunglasses. Jake's voice was low even. "They were behind a locked gate. That you broke." Nancy laughed. "Oh, please. It was barely hanging on. Maybe take better care of your stuff next time." Jake took one step forward, gripping the fence post. "You stole from me. You terrorized newborn animals. And now you're planning to throw a party to celebrate it." Brenda grinned, showing teeth. "We're planning to serve local, ethical, sustainable cuisine," she said mockingly. "You should be thanking us for putting your little hick town on the map." Jake stared at them in silence for a long moment, letting the fury boil inside without showing it. Then he turned and walked away. He didn't shout, didn't threaten, but in his mind 1,000 wheels turned. He would take them down, not with fists, not with rage, but with something far, far worse. Exposure. They wanted a show? They were about to get one. And it wouldn't end with applause. It would end with sirens and screaming. The hum of cicadas filled the air as Jake stood in the shade of his porch, phone to his ear, trying one last time to get anyone, to take him seriously. "No, I'm not just calling to complain," he said, pacing the length of the deck. "They've taken livestock. That's theft. That's a felony. The animal control clerk on the other end sounded bored. Sir, unless you have microchipping or visible tags that match official documentation, our hands are tied. Jake rubbed his eyes. I have footage. I have timestamps. I have a broken gate. What else do you need? A warrant, the woman replied, which we can't get without more compelling evidence. I suggest filing a civil complaint. Click. He lowered the phone slowly, as if it had betrayed him. The porch creaked under his boots as he leaned on the railing and stared out across the pasture. The sheep grazed peacefully, unaware of the storm swirling just over the ridge. The Karen sisters weren't just thieves. They were manipulators. Expert liars with perfect smiles and enough social media clout to make truth feel like a suggestion. Jake had spent a week building up every possible angle, and still no justice. No help. He wasn't about to beg. Late that afternoon, a battered sedan pulled into his drive. Out stepped Lauren Kessler, local vet, and one of the few people Jake actually trusted in town. I came as soon as I could, she said, brushing dirt off her khakis. Heard about the lambs. I'm sorry. Jake led her to the barn, where he showed her the damage to the pen and the video footage. Lauren frowned as she watched. They didn't even try to be subtle. They don't need to, Jake muttered. Everyone sees them as harmless. She squatted beside the broken gate, examining the splintered wood. They knew what they were doing. Took the youngest ones. The quietest. That wasn't random. Jake nodded grimly. They've got a whole event planned. Saturday. Flyer says farm fresh lamb. Lauren's face twisted. Those lambs aren't even weaned. They don't know what they're doing. Jake didn't answer. He was already moving. Over the next 2 days, he compiled everything. Every piece of digital evidence was saved, backed up, and timestamped. He printed photos from his trail cam, capturing Brenda hoisting the crate, Nancy checking her phone with a lamb squirming inside. He got drone footage from a friend who'd recently started a local videography business. Zoomed-in shots of the Karen sisters' backyard revealed a growing number of party tables, chairs, tiki torches, and, most importantly, open flames. Jake also dug into county codes. Their rental property wasn't zoned for events. It wasn't licensed for food service. And they certainly weren't allowed to host a party with open grills during an active fire ban. The moment the pieces aligned, Jake placed 3 calls. First, to the fire marshal's office. He described the layout, the number of people expected, and the obvious safety violations. Second, to the county sheriff, this time, armed with clearer evidence. And third, to someone he never thought he'd involve in anything like this, Ellie Wren, a local journalist with a massive online following. She'd once covered a grain silo explosion and made it go viral. If there was one person who could frame this entire fiasco for maximum impact, it was her. She answered on the second ring. Jake Parker? From Parker Farm. Her voice was crisp, sharp. That's me. What's the story? He paused. It's about stolen sheep, and 2 women who think they can turn my farm into their circus. Ellie laughed. I'm listening. By Friday, Jake had built a digital folder so tight it could choke a defense attorney. Ellie visited the property to capture footage. Warm golden hour shots of the real barnyard, the grieving mother sheep, the broken gate. This is good, she muttered, shooting B-roll. Real good. Jake wasn't smiling. Make sure the public knows the truth, he said. They're going to cook them. That night, Jake parked just shy of the Karen's property line again, staying out of sight behind a stand of pines. Through binoculars, he watched as party prep escalated. Brenda and Nancy were dancing to blaring pop music, wine glasses sloshing in their hands. Brenda wore a straw hat far too small for her head, paired with an apron that said BABQ Queen. Nancy was spraying citronella mist around their patio, shouting instructions at a young man assembling a DJ table. And in the center of it all, in a small wooden pen built right on the lawn, were the 2 lambs. Still alive. Barely. They huddled together, shaking, their eyes wide and ears twitching at the thud of bass. They were penned like prizes, decorations for the aesthetic, not animals with needs. Jake's chest clenched. He clicked off the binoculars and sat back, staring at the sky. Tomorrow. Everything would come to a head tomorrow. Saturday arrived with the promise of heat. By noon, the Karen sisters' party was in full swing. SUVs clogged the narrow road. Guests in wide-brimmed hats and pastel polos fanned themselves with custom party programs. Nancy live-streamed the event on her phone, parading the lambs behind her. "Meet Bubbles and Fluffy," she said, grinning into the camera. "Aren't they the cutest appetizers you've ever seen?" Jake watched it unfold from his laptop, every second documented. He could barely stomach it, but he had to know. He waited for the signal. It came just after 3 p.m., a text from Ellie. Rolling in. Then, from the fire marshal. Team en route. And finally, the sheriff's office. Dispatch approved. Officers in motion. Jake climbed into his truck and started the engine. The gravel spat beneath his tires as he turned toward the scene. The moment he rounded the curve, the chaos began. First came the fire marshal's truck, bright red, lights flashing. It parked across the driveway, like a roadblock. Then the sheriff's car, siren whooping once as it approached. Party guests paused, confused, drinks halfway to their lips. Brenda stepped forward, eyebrows arched behind her oversized sunglasses. Excuse me? This is a private function." "Ma'am," said the deputy as he climbed out, "we've had multiple reports of fire code violations, animal endangerment, and illegal use of private property for commercial events." Nancy laughed, raising her hands in mock surrender. What is this, a raid? But behind her, the guests were already pulling out phones, filming, whispering. The fire marshal walked past the balloon arch and gestured toward the smoking grill. "Did you get a fire permit for this?" Brenda scoffed. "We're just grilling. It's not a restaurant." Jake arrived last, stepping out of his truck like a storm cloud. He held a tablet with the trail cam footage queued up. As he approached, people recognized him. Cameras panned. "You want proof," he said, voice calm and lethal. "Here's your proof." He held up the screen. The video played. Brenda, caught red-handed, hauling a crate over the fence. Nancy, shoving a lamb inside. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Brenda's face drained of color. "This is taken out of context." "Context," Jake repeated, stepping closer. "How about the broken gate? The flyers? The live stream you posted 20 minutes ago, calling them appetizers?" The sheriff signaled to an officer. "Secure the animals." 2 deputies crossed the yard. Nancy tried to block them, shrieking, "You can't take them. They're party assets." But the lambs were gently scooped up and carried to the waiting animal control van. In the distance, Ellie's drone buzzed overhead, capturing everything. Brenda, red-faced and wild-eyed, lunged for the camera. "You can't do this to us. We have followers. This is defamation." "You should have stuck to tofu," Jake muttered under his breath. The party was over, but the consequences were just beginning. As Jake walked back to his truck, the lambs now safe and silent in the crate beside him, he passed Brenda and Nancy sitting on the curb. Their expensive farm chic outfits were dust-streaked and wilted in the heat. Nancy's mascara ran down her cheeks. Brenda's phone sat abandoned on the grass. "You think this is over?" Brenda snapped. "We'll sue you. You'll be canceled." Jake didn't look at them. He opened the truck door, set the crate gently inside, and finally glanced over his shoulder. "Go ahead," he said. "Try." He shut the door. The drone hovered overhead, capturing the wreckage, the collapsed tables, the half-eaten cupcakes, the signs that now read like confessions. But it wasn't the end. Not yet. The wind had shifted by the time Jake rolled back into his driveway. The scent of smoldering charcoal, cheap perfume, and public disgrace lingered faintly in the evening air, carried from across the ridge like the fading echo of a distant explosion. He parked the truck beside the barn, engine ticking as it cooled, and gently lifted the crate with the 2 rescued lambs inside. They were still shivering, confused but safe. One of them let out a tiny, uncertain bleat, and Jake's breath caught in his chest. "Welcome home," he whispered, brushing a thumb over the smaller one's wool. He set the crate down in the same pen they had been stolen from, freshly repaired and fortified with reinforced locks. The other sheep gathered around curiously, sniffing, nosing the newcomers like prodigal children returned from war. It should have felt like victory. But Jake didn't smile. He stepped outside the barn, closing the doors behind him, and stood beneath the slowly darkening sky. Fireflies blinked in and out across the pasture, and the moon was beginning its rise above the trees. Peaceful, quiet, yet beneath it all, his mind still buzzed. It hadn't really ended. Not yet. Because, for people like Brenda and Nancy, shame wasn't the same as guilt. They didn't feel sorry. They felt exposed. And the difference between the two was the difference between a lesson learned and a grudge held. They weren't the type to retreat quietly. By Sunday morning, that prediction came true. Jake's phone pinged nonstop from the moment he opened his eyes. Messages from neighbors, friends, even strangers poured in links, screenshots, screen recordings. The Karen sisters were online again. This time, not smiling. Brenda had posted a video from what looked like the inside of a cluttered home office. Her face was puffed with rage, her voice shaky and breathless with indignation. To our loyal followers, we've been the victims of a targeted smear campaign orchestrated by a local hater who can't handle empowered women succeeding in a male-dominated world. He weaponized small-town politics and falsified accusations to destroy our business and brand. Cut to Nancy, eyes glassy behind oversized glasses. We just wanted to celebrate sustainable living and ethical food choices. But now we're being threatened, harassed, and censored for loving animals the way we love our community. Jake chuckled bitterly as he watched. They were trying to flip the narrative. Victims now. Martyrs. He scrolled down the page. Comments flooded the feed. Some sympathizing, others calling them out. Sharing clips from Ellie Wren's viral takedown, which had already racked up over 500,000 views under the title. Karen's kidnap lambs for clout, get wrecked by Farmer Justice. Jake leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't about lambs anymore. It was about truth. About leverage. And they were about to learn what it felt like to lose control of the story. He spent the rest of the morning on his laptop, pulling together every raw clip, every photo Ellie had given him, every witness statement he'd collected. Then he sent it all to 3 places: the Sheriff's Department, the County Licensing Board, and Ellie again. Then he waited. By Monday afternoon, the Karen sisters' rental house was quiet. No music, no laughter, no guests, just silence. Jake stood by the fence with a pair of binoculars and scanned the property. Gone were the tiki torches, the balloons, the patio seating. The wooden pen had been dismantled, likely in haste. Trash bags lined the driveway, bulging with the remnants of a party that had imploded mid-toast. The front door creaked open. Brenda stepped out. She wasn't dressed for the camera now, no flashy blouse or staged ensemble. Just a gray hoodie pulled over her head, dark circles under her eyes, her expression flat and stunned. She moved like someone walking through a dream they couldn't wake from. Nancy followed, dragging a suitcase with one wheel missing. Her face was turned down, lips pursed in a tight line. Then came a third figure, tall, lean, with a clipboard in hand. Jake didn't recognize him immediately. Then he saw the county logo on the car parked out front. Code enforcement. He watched as Brenda gestured animatedly, arguing, pointing around the property. The man remained calm, nodding, writing something down. Eventually, he handed Brenda a notice. Bold red letters printed across the top. Brenda crumpled it in her hand, turned, and stormed inside. Nancy hesitated. She glanced back toward Jake's property, toward the barn that still stood proudly on the horizon. Their eyes met briefly. She looked away. Jake lowered the binoculars. The pressure in his chest finally began to loosen. That evening, Ellie called. "Thought you'd like to know," she said. The county revoked their event permit retroactively. They're being fined for multiple violations. And someone leaked a clip of Brenda calling the sheriff a pig in polyester. It's everywhere. Jake raised an eyebrow. Leaked. She chuckled. Let's just say Karma's camera is always rolling. He smiled for the first time in days. Thanks for everything. You earned it, Ellie said. And Jake? The video's trending. You're kind of a hero right now. He ended the call and stepped out onto his porch, beer in hand, watching the horizon fade to dusk. The barn stood in the distance, its silhouette a testament to resilience. Inside, the lambs slept soundly. Days passed. Then a week. Jake returned to routine, quiet mornings in the barn, long afternoons repairing fencing, soft evenings walking the pastures under open skies. The Karen sisters stayed quiet. Their social feeds went dark. The rental house appeared deserted. Until one Friday morning, a moving truck pulled into their driveway. Jake stood at the top of his hill, arms crossed, watching as suitcases and boxes were dragged out. Brenda barked orders at the movers, gesturing impatiently. Nancy stayed mostly in the background, head low, shoulders hunched. Jake didn't wave. They didn't look his way. When the truck finally pulled away, leaving nothing behind but a dead garden and a few broken lawn chairs, Jake felt something in his chest finally exhale. But the story wasn't over. 2 days later, as he was sweeping the barn aisle, a man pulled up in a beat-up blue sedan. Thin, mid-50s, clipboard in hand, glasses slipping down his nose. "You Jake Parker?" Jake nodded, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Name's Clark. I work for the county. Just here to follow up on a complaint we received. Well, from the same party." Jake's brows furrowed. "What kind of complaint?" Clark flipped a few pages. "Apparently, you're being accused of housing unlicensed livestock for commercial use. Someone claimed you've been hosting unauthorized agricultural events and profiting from them." Jake stared at him, stunned. Clark lowered the clipboard. "Don't worry. I've seen your file. Nothing sticks. But the thing about petty people, they don't stop. They just change tactics." Jake exhaled sharply. "Thanks for the heads up." Clark nodded. "You're clean. But if they try again, keep a paper trail. Every animal, every receipt, every fence post. You're doing things right. Don't give them a foothold." After he left, Jake sat on a hay bale for a long time, thinking. The Karen sisters were gone, but not forgotten. They'd left their stink in the air, like the bitter aftertaste of a spoiled harvest. But he wasn't afraid of them. Let them throw stones from behind screens. Let them scream into the void of their collapsing relevance. He'd face them on his land, with truth on his side, and won. And he'd do it again if he had to. Later that night, Jake uploaded a new post to his own feed. A single photo of the barn at sunset, the lambs curled up in the hay, peaceful and safe. Caption: "Real animals. Real farm. Real consequences." The comments flooded in, supportive and grateful. Messages from other farmers. From strangers. From people who had been bullied, manipulated, stolen from, and never fought back. But Jake had. And that mattered. The wind blew softly across the pasture as Jake sat on the porch, watching the stars blink into view one by one. The sheep were asleep. The barn was quiet. But the world wasn't done spinning yet. He knew that. There would always be more Karens. But from now on, they'd know better than to come for Parker Farm. And if they didn't, well, he'd be ready.